Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Sacred Anarchies, a post-church podcast. I am here, as usual, as always, with the incredible, indomitable, unequivocal, irreproachable.
Oh, irreproachable. Oh, I don't know. I'm probably reproachable in some way. Trust me.
I was just trying to think of, adjectives. Anyway, You're here. Barry is here. I'm here. And we're going to chat about a few things today that we hope you will be interested in as well.
We do on a podcast, isn't it? You chat.
We do. We chat.
Yeah.
And we chat together because so much better than chatting alone. Well, for me anyway, maybe not for you. Maybe you'd rather chat alone.
I've had some pretty good conversations with myself, actually.
Speaking of conversations, man, it has been a week for the conversations out in the world. There's so much happening and not pretty.
No, it's not pretty everywhere, and I think there's a lot of anticipation about the verdict in that trial in Minneapolis, the Chauvin Trial.
Yeah.
And of course, in the wake of all of that, more killings.
More killings, more shootings, more mass shootings, more police killings. Yeah, the interesting, I don't know if I would call it interesting, but for lack of a better term, one of the crazy things that are happening surrounding the Chauvin trial, they are closing schools in anticipation for the unrest in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area.
Yeah, I mean, it's a difficult one because it's hard to imagine that there wouldn't be a verdict that everybody thinks there ought to be, given that video. It would seem hard to argue with, but there have been lots of videos. Going all the way back to Rodney King, that so cut and dry, but with all of the machinations of the justice or injustice system, I don't know what to call it. You never know, and you can only hope that. I mean, there's a lot riding on this, probably even more than just in America, because they're obsessed. They're not obsessed, but they're really focused on it here as well, because
everyone's watching.
Yeah, and we had the Black Lives Matter responses over here to that killing.
Yeah.
So, it's very much. I mean, we've had that ruckus over the government's racism report, which the EU, I mean not the EU, the UN actually dismissed as fostering white privilege and racism today, which didn't go down too well. And then we've got the big football scandal going on here at the moment as well, which is not worth going into. But
yeah, no. But I mean, it would be unthinkable. It would be absolutely unthinkable to imagine a verdict for Chauvin anything other than guilty on all accounts.
You think?
And they'll be announcing a verdict any time now. So, I know some people were hoping for yesterday, last night when the trial closed. I know the jury is deliberating all day today. It could be today. It could be by the end of the week. So, I mean, we'll just see. Everybody is waiting with bated breath.
Yeah.
So we are not unlike those people who are waiting with bated breath, but we know that there is a lot of things that need to change, that must change in order for life to be tenable in the world, in order for, in order for just a better existence for everyone, especially people who have been denied a certain type of life for a long time. So
yeah, it's brutal.
It is brutal. And speaking about brutal, speaking about new life, we had a very interesting Monday Musings last night, which we're going to talk a little further about today. So for those of you who don't know, our Monday Musings, we would love to have you on them. It's kind of like a more casual version of the podcast. So we're doing it live with people. It's on Instagram, and every Monday at 12 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 8 p.m. UK time, we jump on for anywhere from 20 to 30 minutes, and we muse about something we have obviously prepared for. It's usually a subject having to do with art, literature, culture, music, fashion, relationships, something, maybe a new book, something new that's theological, but it's really fun, and we invite people to participate in it. And last night, we were talking about a new, but not so new magazine. I guess, would you call it a
No,
redesign, a
it's
relaunch?
no, it's a brand new magazine.
You're saying it's totally new.
Totally new.
Yeah.
Totally new.
Okay.
Yeah, which
And
is why they called it issue 0, because it's not even the first issue yet.
yeah, so I said this on our musings last night. We actually talked a few months ago about the original magazine that this one grew out of, which is Love.
Yeah,
It's it was a massive publication. In fact, do you have it close by? Because we do the YouTubes now, so people can see.
I can go get it.
Yeah, why don't you run and get it quick so people who watch on
Talking.
YouTube can actually see. So it was this big journal called Love, and it was absolutely amazing. Just an absolute aesthetic feast, a literary feast, fashion editorial feast, anything you can think of. It was just so good. And the last issue that was put out, I think was put out last March. It happened during the pandemic, and there were some very good insights in terms of what was happening at the beginning of the pandemic, all throughout culture, and as they were getting ready to transition their magazine. Ben Cobb is one of the editors, very cool, high profile fashion guy. You can follow him on Instagram. Just really
Well,
fantastic, really
so
fabulous. And now, yeah, so that was what it looked like originally for those of you who are watching this on YouTube. I have a copy too, but it's
there were
downstairs.
2 volumes.
Just absolute colossus of a journal and a publication.
And so they made a hardcover version of
Yeah.
a magazine that had been around for a while, and it was kind of a fashion culture magazine. The woman behind it, Katie Grand, is kind of a boutique magazine maven, very
Mhm.
good, very creative. She
Mhm.
sort of started doing magazines when there seemed to be no market for them, and made them happen. So this was the final. It ended up being the final version of this particular
I think
magazine.
I have the final version, don't I?
What do you
And
mean?
I have the final version of the
Yeah,
magazine,
yeah,
the one
yeah.
you
This
in the
these were the final ones. The one that
final
came out
one.
in the
Yeah,
lockdown at the end of it,
yeah.
and
And so
then
now, about a year later, they've launched a brand new magazine in the same kind of form and aesthetic and, hardcover, just almost looks like just a fantastic coffee table book. And again, for those of you who are watching on YouTube, sorry for the audio listeners, you can head to the YouTube channel,
yeah,
or you can just Google it. This is the now new magazine. Perfect.
look better like this, don't I?
Yeah, I love the perfect square.
Yeah, it's Instagram ready.
It is Instagram ready, absolutely.
This one,
People
yeah. So
will talk about it.
this magazine is called Perfect.
Yeah. And the interesting thing about it is they launched it, obviously. The Last Love magazine was launched at the beginning of the pandemic. Now they're launching this new publication as we're moving into a post-pandemic era. So obviously we're not out of it yet, but the world is starting to open up more. Lockdowns around the world are starting to ease, but it is absolutely a new reality for people everywhere. And I know in the beginning of the pandemic, people were using this phrase all the time, new normal, and truly that is kind of what we're living in now. But we're trying to anticipate and figure out exactly what that new normal is. And so I think this is such a beautiful example of that, because they start off the publication talking about how they mean to use the word perfect.
Yeah,
Because if you're not careful, that word and what it traditionally means can get you into a lot of trouble and can be really damaging. But they actually start out redefining it, reauthoring it, and talking about what it might mean to pursue perfection in a way that looks towards completion, in a way that looks towards the possible, in a way that is completely subjective and open minded. And one thing they said was that the publication was a lesson in improvisation. And I thought that's such a clever way to refer to a new project that is, blossoming itself into a very soon to be post pandemic world, because it truly is for all of us a lesson in improvisation. And we're not going to get it right. We're probably going to miss it a lot. But in doing that is sort of how it is the perfect piece about it, is the beauty about it. The point is not to be perfect in a long-standing, definition of that word, but to be perfect in a way that is
yeah,
gorgeously and
and that
humanly
kind
imperfect.
of that kind of experimentation thing is why they called it issue zero and not
Yeah,
issue.
say more about that because I just find that so intriguing. Something about me loves it, and I don't even know what they fully mean by it.
Well, I think I can even read you what it
Do
says. But basically, they sort of said that they weren't ready to make this issue one because it was the movement towards that
mm.
they were working for. Maybe I can't find it. It's probably too. I should have thought about that before you asked me.
No,
But
it's okay. But like even what you just said, this issue and what they've put out, which is so gorgeous and so impressive and inspiring to so many, is still a movement towards the very beginning and the very genesis of what they want to put out and what they want to start. So it's almost like the entire world is kind of waking from a lockdown slumber. It
yeah,
certainly feels like that for me and you here in UK, where we have been extremely locked down for several months.
yeah,
And we're kind of opening up to this new world, and we're kind of like stretching and yawning. It kind of reminds me of like the Brigadoon 100-year kind of sleep, and they wake up, one for one day every 100 years, and it feels like you're kind of waking up from this weird hibernation, but you're entering into just a totally new world. And we know that we're not fully prepared. We don't know what to fully expect, and we know that we're not. Um, the process of it all has not been completed in us, in the world, in our communities. The pandemic has um, betrayed in the best way so many realities that were being hidden and concealed in terms of injustices and capitalism and politics and state and government and all these sorts of things. And now it has just all been laid bare. It's all been exposed, and we're all just trying to figure out how to get along. And we're nowhere even close to the beginning, but we're moving our way towards that moment of beginning. And we're very much engaged. And I think for me, when you said issue zero, like that's all I felt, as you
yeah,
kind of were describing
yeah.
that.
One, they're not ready for one yet. It's zero. It's like the starting point. And what I really liked is the other piece of that. They're in because in there they explain why they call it perfect, and they do a little history
Yeah.
of the development of the word, which is always an interesting. We're both kind of fascinated with language and words, and I love the way that words develop over time. But it's also kind of remarkable how far words stray away from
Indeed.
what they used to mean,
Mhm.
and in a different era and a different age. And I think this happens a lot. I find this happens a lot with people when they like read from the Bible.
Yeah.
And I always think that scripture, be perfect as your Father in heaven is
Yes. God.
perfect. And as they say, that it was sort of in the Middle Ages that you start to get this shift in the idea of perfection, of the word perfect, towards this kind of idea of things being perfectly uh, perfect, perfectionism as we understand it today. And their whole take is, as you said, to go that way. And I like the bit that they added as well, that really to do something perfectly is to do the idea justice. And I
Yeah.
think, and so I think it's very interesting when words get passed out
Yeah.
in particular settings, and we apply modern meaning to old. It's like when you read in the Old Testament, the bowels of compassion. We don't think about the body in the same way that people used to think about the body. The bowels used to be the sort of seat of the soul and stuff like that. So when, we think of bowels as bowel movement, you know what I mean? We think of that's where the crap comes from. But, in ancient cultures, the bowels is where they thought the soul came from. So the bowels of compassion were the depths of compassion that came up, so yeah, I think what's interesting, and we talked about this a bit yesterday, is there are lots of people in different realms, all experimenting and risking and trying to start things and restart things and kickstart things in very uncertain and very unclear times. I mean, there was obviously a lot of credibility behind most of the people involved in the creation of this magazine. So they probably had a certain level of, social awareness and an expectancy because it's on the back of some great work. But nonetheless, we're still in a lockdown.
Yeah.
The economy is not running full throttle. Lots of people aren't working. We don't know what's going to happen in a couple of months. We don't know when things are going to go back to any semblance of what used to be normality. And you'd think for most people, they'd sort of go, well, let's just wait a bit and see what happens and then see where the ground is, instead of actually kind of making their own ground.
Yeah. It's
Making
like,
their
forget this ground. We just need new ground altogether. We just need new soil.
Yeah. And I think, and I was thinking about, and we talked about this and this, I guess we'll probably talk about at some point in the future, but we sort of moved away from the idea of a new normal to the new now.
The new now. Yeah.
Because we don't know, normal is, again, it's another one of those words that gets overused. And I don't think we actually do want to get back to normal. I think we do need
I
a
think
new,
some people do.
but I think we need a new now. We need a world where there's a little
Yeah.
more of a sense of equanimity and equality and justice and goodness. And it's really hard to see that happening, when government's still, society is still sort of driven by the pound sign, the dollar sign. Economics seems to be the economics seem to be the dominant barometer for measuring everything in our
Yeah.
existence.
Yeah.
And, I think we've reached a point where it's time to sort of rethink that. And many of the articles in this magazine, if you can call it that, address lots of the social. There's a huge section on trans, queer people. There's a big thing on body image. Because essentially it's a fashion magazine. Well,
Yeah.
fashion has been at the forefront of some cultural stuff and way behind the curve on many other things, including, body size and body shaming and all of those sorts of things. And what they've done is they've handed over sections of this magazine to people who can speak for themselves better than the editors can speak about this stuff, about what it's like.
Which, well done them. More
Yeah,
people need to be doing
yeah,
that. But that is the new kind of now that we want to be living in. We want more voices at the table. We want more representation. And, you and I have been talking a lot lately about how we think that we're experiencing the failure and the falling of democracy and around the world. Some things that are very clear and some things that, are happening behind closed doors, but it all equals sort of one direction, which is the fall of democracy as we know it, or as we imagined it to be, or as we thought it was,
yeah.
but perhaps it was
Is
never
it,
even that at all. It's just
is it,
completely.
Zizek that said democracy? Yeah, it's a nice idea.
It's enough. But to kind of make my point there is that I do think that we're living in the time of a massive ending of one thing and the beginning of another. I really think that we're living in an
Yeah,
origin story where 50 years from now we'll be like, that was the fall of that. You can, every generation maybe, or every generation and a half, can look back and see the fall and rise of something major, usually in their lifetime.
yeah,
And I do think that when we look back, we're going to be like, oh, that's when that happened. That's when the world became new. That's when globalization did this, or that's when we finally had enough of corrupt politicians and corrupt power and all of these things. I don't know, it's just sort of what I think, because the
that's I guess that would be
social structures as they are now are just completely unsustainable, and capitalism, all in all forms, in terms of its goal of unfettered and unbridled growth fetishes, it's impossible. And this idea of perfect is all about realizing what is fully possible. And I love that, and they say that in their opening in the
and
public.
also taking the risk to bring something to fruition and to do it do an idea justice,
Yeah.
which, you know, you can apply to so many things in life. And, you know, we've been talking a lot lately with people in various bits of deconstruction in their life and in their faith, and in some ways the whole task in all of that is simply to do justice to, you know, it's almost like to do justice to the claims that you make with your life. That would be an interesting way to sort of think about how you live out a life of meaning. In that, you know, the way you do that is not by making a list of professions, but by actually living in a way that does justice to the things that you say you hold to.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, we have got lots to look forward to, hopefully, in the coming weeks and months. We certainly have a lot to look forward to at H&Co over the next few weeks. We're going to be rolling out some brand new offerings for everyone that we're really excited about. And we have some great podcasts with some great guest lines up as
Yeah.
well. So be looking forward to that. We are, and always looking forward to continuing this dialogue and conversation with everyone who has responded to our invitation on the podcast each week, on our Monday musings, and our culture courses, whatever it is we're doing. We just love doing it with all of you. So uh, that's it. And we will see you all next week. Yeah,
Yeah. Well, I'll be here. Will you be here?
I'll be here. All
Bye.
right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.